Welcome to the Healing Waves Reiki podcast. I'm your host, Kathy Scarpito, Reiki Master Teacher, spiritual mentor, intuitive, and physical therapist. This is a grounded, heart-centered space where we explore Reiki, energy, and the science and spirit of healing. How Reiki supports the body, deepens intuition, regulates the nervous system, and helps transform the experience of healing. Where Reiki meets science, intuition meets practice, and healing becomes more human. If you're curious about Reiki, drawn to deeper healing, or seeking a more connective and intuitive way to care for yourself or others, you're in the right place. Let's begin. Welcome back to Healing Waves Reiki podcast. Today I want to explore a question that sits right at the intersection of science, spirit, and healing. What if intention changes more than we realize? This is one of those conversations that has fascinated people for years because it asks something many of us have felt, even if we couldn't explain it. Can our thoughts, words, emotions, and intentions influence the world around us and the body within us? And more specifically for today, can intention influence healing? To explore that, I want to begin with a well-known and often controversial experiment involving water. You may have heard of Dr. Masaru Emoto and what became known as the water experiments. Emoto became widely known for his work claiming that human consciousness, our words, thoughts, intentions, and even music, could influence the crystalline structure of water. In his experiments, water was exposed to different words, music, and intentions, then frozen and photographed under a microscope. According to Emoto, water exposed to loving words, prayer, gratitude, and beautiful music formed symmetrical, intricate, visually beautiful crystals. Water exposed to harsh words, anger, criticism, or chaotic input appeared disorganized, fragmented, and less coherent. I have seen the photos, and they are truly amazing. His work became incredibly popular because it offered something people deeply wanted to believe, that intention matters, that energy matters, and what we bring into relationship with something changes it. And on a human level, many of us already know that to be true. But before we go further, I want to be very clear about something important. Emoto's work is not considered rigorous scientific proof. His experiments have been widely criticized for lacking strong controls, objective methodology, and reliable replication under standard scientific conditions. And that matters. Because on this podcast, I never want to confuse possibility with proof. I never want to force science to say something it doesn't say. And I never want to use spirituality to bypass discernment. So this is not an episode about proving that words literally change water crystals. It is an episode about the much more interesting question underneath it. What if intention changes the environment in which healing happens? That is a very different conversation. And it is a much stronger one. Because whether or not frozen water crystals can prove intention, we do know something very important. The body is always responding to environment. And that environment is not just external, it is internal. What story are you telling yourself about yourself? Your body is constantly responding to the chemistry, perception, and energetic conditions it is living inside of. And that changes everything. We are, quite literally, an internal environment. Our bodies made largely of water, our tissues are fluid, our blood is fluid, our lymph is fluid, our cells exist in fluid. The nervous system communicates through electrochemical signaling in a fluid environment. And this internal environment is constantly being shaped by what we experience, by stress, by safety, by fear, by perception, by emotion, by thought, by belief, by regulation, by connection. So whether or not intention changes the structure of frozen water in a lab, we know something equally profound. Intention changes us. And that matters deeply in healing, because healing does not happen in a vacuum. Healing happens in an environment, and the body heals differently in stress than it does in safety. When the body perceives threat, whether that threat is real or perceived, it shifts into sympathetic activation, fight, flight, protection, survival. In that state, stress hormones rise, muscles tighten, breathing changes, digestion slows, inflammation patterns shift. Repair becomes less prioritized. The body reallocates energy towards protection, and that is intelligent. The body is not doing something wrong. It is adapting to what it believes is happening. But when the system perceives safety, something changes. The body shifts. Breathing deepens. Heart rate slows. Muscles soften. Digestion improves. Repair mechanisms come back online. The immune system functions more efficiently. The parasympathetic nervous system becomes more available. And this is where the body is most able to heal. That is not spiritual theory. That is physiology. And this is where this conversation becomes so important. Because what helps shape whether the body moves towards protection or repair? Perception, environment, emotional state, internal signaling, relational safety, and yes, intention. Intention changes attention, and attention changes physiology. What we repeatedly focus on shapes what the nervous system prioritizes. What we repeatedly rehearse becomes familiar to the body. There's a well-known story about two wolves living and fighting within us. One represents fear, anger, resentment, criticism, survival, and reactivity. The other represents compassion, gratitude, trust, peace, presence, and connection. And when asked which wolf wins, the answer is the one we feed. And while this story is simple, it points towards something we now understand in both psychology and nervous system science. What we repeatedly reinforce becomes strengthened. The thoughts we rehearse, the emotional states we live inside of, the stress patterns we repeat, the beliefs we reinforce, all shape the internal environment the body experiences. That doesn't mean we deny difficult emotions or pretend pain doesn't exist. It means we begin paying attention to what we are practicing internally every day, because the nervous system listens to repetition, and healing is influenced by the environments we create within ourselves. This is why the tone of care matters, why emotional safety matters, why language matters, why the way we speak to ourselves matters, while the energy in a room matters, while feeling safe with a practitioner matters, while presence matters, while intention matters. Not because intention is magic, but because intention changes the conditions in which healing occurs. And this is where Reiki becomes so meaningful, because Reiki helps shift the healing environment. Reiki is not forcing the body to heal. It is not overriding the body. It is not doing healing to someone. It is helping create the internal conditions in which healing becomes more available. Reiki supports the nervous system. It supports regulation. It supports safety. It supports presence. It supports parasympathetic access. It supports the body's natural repair processes by helping the system move out of protection and into restoration. And when that happens, healing becomes more possible. Not because Reiki is fixing the body, but because the body becomes more available to do what it already knows how to do. That is the deeper truth. The body is intelligent. The body is adaptive. The body is always listening. The question is, what environment is it listening to? What are we reinforcing? What are we rehearsing? What are we signaling through our thoughts, our stress, our beliefs, our pace, our words, our care? What kind of internal environment are we asking the body to heal inside of? That, to me, is the real value of this conversation. Not whether water crystals prove consciousness, but whether we are paying attention to the conditions that shape healing. Because healing is not just about what we do to the body. It is also about what the body is experiencing while it is trying to heal. And that is where science and spirit begin to meet. Not in blind belief, not in rigid skepticism, but in curiosity, in discernment, in observation, in relationship, in learning how healing actually unfolds. And maybe that is the better question. Not, can intention change water? But what is my intention changing within me? What words am I listening to? What stories am I carrying? Which of those stories still belong to me? And what kind of internal environment am I creating for my own healing? Because healing doesn't just happen through what we do. It also unfolds within the conditions we create, within the words we repeat, the beliefs we nurture, the relationships we choose, the moments of presence we allow ourselves to experience. If today's conversation resonated with you, I've created a free companion workbook called The Power of Intention, Notice, and Nurture. Inside, you'll find guided reflections to help you explore the words you've received, the stories you've been telling yourself, and the intentions you'd like to keep cultivating moving forward. My hope is that it gives you a quiet space to pause, notice, and gently nurture the environment in which your own healing unfolds. You can download it free on my website in the workbook library. Thank you for spending this time with me today. Until next time, may you notice with curiosity, nurture with compassion, and remember that healing is always listening. One intention, one breath, one wave at a time. Thank you for listening to the Healing Waves Reiki podcast. If this episode resonated with you, share it with someone who may need it. Subscribe and leave a review so more people can find this work. Until next time, Stay grounded, stay open, and keep healing. This podcast is intended for informational, educational, and inspirational purposes only. The content shared on this podcast is not medical, psychological, legal, or professional advice, and is not intended to diagnose, treat, cure, or prevent any condition. Always seek the guidance of a qualified healthcare provider, mental health professional, or other licensed professional regarding your specific needs. The views expressed by guests are their own and do not necessarily reflect those of the host. Listener discretion and personal responsibility are advised.